They say beauty opens doors, that it brings favor, that it brings kindness, that it brings love. But in Aoko village, beauty destroyed every man who touched it. Not because the woman was wicked, not because she was cruel, not because she wanted revenge, but because love was the only thing strong enough to survive her gift. And only one man ever loved her before the world told him she was beautiful. Long before the whispers, before the fear, before men began disappearing like smoke in wind, there lived a girl named Inkiru. Inkiru was born on a night of heavy rain, the kind of rain that floods farms, that turns footpaths into rivers, that washes secrets deep into the soil when no one can retrieve them again. The kind of rain elders say carries messages from the spirit world. Thunder cracked the sky when her first cry came. Women attending the birth said the lightning that followed looked like a hand reaching down from the clouds. But maybe that was just a story they told themselves later when they needed explanations. By morning, her mother was gone. Not dead, just gone. She had walked into the rain and never returned. Some said they saw her footprints leading to the forest. Others said the footprints led to the river. A few whispered that there were no footprints at all, as if she had simply dissolved into water and been carried away. The baby was left behind, crying, alone, wrapped in cloth that smelled of blood and rain. The women who washed the baby shook their heads slowly, not in fear, not in wonder, just uncertainty. They examined her carefully, counting fingers, checking her tongue, looking for signs. They said nothing special about her. No mark on her face, no strange cry, no obvious sign from the spirits. Her eyes were normal, her skin was normal. Everything was as it should be. Only that she was quiet, too quiet. Most newborns wail through their first days, angry at being pulled into the world. But Inkiru stopped crying within hours. She watched, she waited, as if she already understood that the world would not rush to hold her. Her father took her home. He was a farmer, a quiet man who spoke more to his yam crops than to people. He named her Inkiru, the good one, because he hoped the name would make it true. He hired women from the village to nurse her, to carry her, to raise her while he walked the fields. But something about the child made people uncomfortable. Not her appearance, not her behavior, just something they couldn't name. A feeling, a weight, the way a room changes when storm clouds gather. So the women came and the women left. And Inkiru learned early that presence does not mean belonging. Inkiru grew into a child the village did not know what to do with. She was not sick, she was not cursed. At least not visibly. She did not limp, she did not scream at night. She did not speak to shadows or hear voices no one else could hear. But she was not beautiful in the way Aoko celebrated beauty. In Aoko, beauty meant full hips that promised many children, round faces that glowed like the moon, skin that caught light, laughter that made men turn their heads, softness, curves, invitation. Inkiru had none of these things. Her body was narrow, her shoulders sharp like a boy's. Her face held no softness men like to praise. Her cheekbones were angular and narrow. Her lips were thin, her eyes were too intense, too watchful. When she smiled, which was rare, it did not invite pursuit, it created distance. When other girls laughed, boys followed the sound like bees to flowers. When Inkiru spoke, the air went still. Not because she was powerful, but because she was unnoticed. Words fell from her mouth and landed in silence. By the time she was 12, the village had made its judgment. The elders said, not every child is born to be admired. And the villagers agreed. They did not beat her. They did not chase her away. They did not accuse her of witchcraft. Those were the violent reactions reserved for children who stood out in dangerous ways. They did something worse. They ignored her. She became background, a shadow that fetched water, a figure that passed through the market, a body that took up space but not attention. When girls her age began preparing for marriage, learning to cook elaborate meals, to dance, to wrap their bodies in cloth that men stare, no one taught Inkiru these things because no one imagined she would need them. Why waste good palm oil on a cracked pot? Some woman said, not cruelly, just practically. And Inkiru heard. She always heard. She grew up inside that silence. Inside the space where other girls received compliments, Inkiru received nothing. Where other girls were warned about men's intentions, Inkiru was left unwarned because no one imagined men would have intentions toward her. She learned to make herself smaller, to speak less, to laugh quietly, if at all, to expect nothing. At night, alone in her father's compound, she would touch her face and wonder what was wrong with it. What had the spirits forgotten to add? What ingredient was missing from the recipe that made other girls bloom while she remained invisible? Her father noticed in his quiet way. He would pat her shoulder sometimes and say, "You are strong, Inkiru. That is worth more than beauty." But she was 14, and strength felt like a consolation prize for losing a contest she never entered. What no one knew, not even the girls who mocked her, was that Inkiru carried a birthmark beneath her left breast. Not large, not ugly, just a faint spiral, like a fingerprint pressed gently by something older than time. It was the color of old honey, darker than her skin, but not by much. In certain light, it almost glowed. In other light, it disappeared entirely. Her grandmother, her father's mother, bent and ancient, noticed it the day Inkiru turned 7. The old woman had been bathing her and her fingers froze when they touched the mark. Her eyes went wide, then narrow, then distant, as if she was remembering something from long ago. That night, the old woman pulled Inkiru close, wrapped her in cloth that smelled of smoke and herbs, and something sweeter, maybe palm wine, maybe regret, and whispered words that would follow Inkiru all her life. "Child," she said, her voice like dry leaves, "you carry a mark I have only seen once before, on my own grandmother, on a woman whose story the village buried because they could not understand it." Inkiru listened, her small heart beating fast. "Any man who binds his life to yours will rise," the old woman continued. "His crops will overflow. His business will prosper. His name will grow. Everything he touches will turn to fortune." Inkiru's eyes lit up. This sounded like a blessing, like magic from the old stories. But her grandmother's grip tightened. "But he must love you first, before the rising, before the fortune, before he knows what you carry. If he comes to you for what you can give him, if he marries you for prosperity, for luck, for gain, the gift will not serve him." The old woman's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "It means greed cannot survive what you carry. That any man who sees you as a tool, as a means to wealth, as a ladder to climb, that man will fall, and the fall will destroy him." "But why?" Inkiru whispered. "Why would the spirits do this?" Her grandmother smiled sadly. "Because love is the only thing powerful enough to hold a gift this strong. Love is the only vessel that doesn't crack under the weight of blessing. Everything else, lust, greed, ambition, pride, they are too brittle. They shatter. And when they shatter, they cut. This mark is not a curse, child. It is a test. It will reveal the truth of every man who approaches you. And when you find the one who loves you first before he knows what you carry, that man is yours forever. The gift will protect him, lift him, bind him to you in ways no ordinary marriage can." Inkiru did not understand, not fully. She was 7 years old and the concepts were too large for her small hands. She only understood one thing. She wanted to be loved without conditions. The old woman died 2 months later, and Inkiru never spoke the conversation to anyone. She kept it locked inside, along with all the other silences she carried. Years passed. Men married, children were born. Life moved forward without her. By the time Inkiru was 18, every girl she had grown up with was either married or promised. They carried babies on their hips. They walked with the particular pride of women who had been chosen, who had been wanted. When festivals came, Inkiru stood at the edges, watching drums beat joy into other people's bones, watching bodies move in rhythm, watching hands find hands, watching laughter rise like smoke into the night sky. When dances started, space formed around her like a wound. People didn't avoid her deliberately. They simply forgot she was there. And when they remembered, they shifted awkwardly, unsure what to do with a woman that existed but did not participate.
She farmed alone. Her father had died the year before, quietly, in his sleep, the way he had lived. He left her a small plot of land and a compound that felt too large for one person. She fetched water alone, walking to the stream before dawn when no one else was there. She preferred it that way, preferred the silence over the pity. She ate alone, cooking meals too large for one person because she had learnt the measurements from watching her father's wives, and those measurements assumed family. At night, she sang softly, not because she was happy, but because silence frightened her. Her voice was actually beautiful, though no one had ever told her. It carried through the compound, through the darkness, a small defiance against loneliness. Still, she waited. For what? She wasn't always sure. For the love her grandmother promised? For a man who would see her before seeing the invisible thing she carried? For proof that she was not a mistake? The waiting felt endless. Then, one day, a man saw her. His name was Obina. He was not rich. He was not particularly handsome in the way village girls measured such things. He was not loud or charming or quick with compliments. He was a woodcarver, hands rough from years of work, eyes steady from hours of concentration, patience carved into his bones from shaping stubborn wood into beautiful things. He had come to Aoko 6 months earlier from a neighboring village, looking for work. He set up a small workshop near the market, and slowly, people began to notice his skill. His bowls were perfectly balanced. His masks captured expressions that seemed alive. His stools never wobbled. But he was quiet, kept to himself, and no family had approached him about marriage. Partly because he was new, partly because he seemed uninterested. They met by accident. Inkiru was at the stream, not at dawn this time, but midday, because she had forgotten to fetch water earlier and her cooking pot was dry. She was rushing, distracted, irritated with herself. She filled her calabash too quickly, lifted it carelessly, and it slipped. The calabash hit a rock and cracked. Water spilled everywhere, precious water that would take another trip to replace. People nearby, women washing clothes, children playing, laughed, not maliciously, just the casual laughter that comes when someone makes a foolish mistake. But laughter feels like mockery when you are already invisible. Inkiru's face burned. She knelt quickly, trying to gather the pieces, trying to pretend she didn't hear them, trying to make herself disappear. Then someone knelt beside her, Obina. He didn't laugh, didn't speak at first, just helped her gather the pieces, his large hands careful with the fragments. When they had collected everything, he looked at her directly, not at her body, not through her, but at her eyes and said, "I can fix this. Come to my workshop tomorrow." That was all. No judgment, no pity, no performance of kindness for the audience of laughing women. Just a simple offer, spoken like it was the most natural thing in the world. Inkiru nodded, unable to speak, and he walked away. She didn't go to his workshop the next day. She was too afraid. Afraid that he would change his mind. Afraid that other people would see and make assumptions. Afraid that kindness was too fragile to examine closely. But 3 days later, she saw him at the market. He greeted her. "You didn't come." I didn't want to bother you." "It's not a bother. I said I would fix it." Something in his voice, calm, matter-of-fact, unbothered, made her breathe easier. "Tomorrow?" he asked. "Tomorrow," she agreed. She went. He fixed the calabash, binding the crack with a resin he had made from tree sap and ground charcoal. When it dried, the crack was barely visible, and the calabash held water perfectly. "How much?" she asked, reaching for the small coins she had brought. "Nothing. I can pay." "I know, but I don't want payment. I want..." He paused, as if choosing words carefully. "I want to know your name." "Inkiru." "Inkiru," he repeated, as if tasting it. "Obina. I'm Obina." "I know." He smiled. "Everyone knows everyone here." "Yes." A silence, not uncomfortable, just present. "Will you come back?" he asked. "To talk, not because I'm fixing something, just to talk." She stared at him, trying to understand why he would want this. "Why?" she finally asked. He shrugged. "Because talking alone is boring, and you seem like you have interesting thoughts." No one had ever said that to her before. "Okay," she whispered. The next day, she returned, and the day after that, and the day after that. Soon, they talked. At first, about small things, the weather, his carvings, her farm, nothing deep or dangerous. But slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, something shifted. Obina listened, actually listened. Not the way people listen while waiting for their turn to speak, but the way someone listens when they actually want to hear what you are saying. He didn't stare at her body or look disappointed by it. He didn't rush her words or interrupt with his own stories. He didn't look embarrassed to be seen with her, even when people walked by his workshop and saw them sitting together. When she told him about her farm struggles, he asked questions, real questions, about soil, about seeds, about timing. When she mentioned her father, he asked what he had been like. And when she said, "Quiet," Obina nodded and said, "Quiet people see more." It was such a simple thing to say, but no one had ever framed her father's silence as seeing rather than lacking. Weeks passed. Their conversations grew longer, deeper. He told her about losing his own father young, about learning to carve because his uncle was a carver and it was the only trade available. She told him about being invisible, about the loneliness that lived in her chest like a stone. He didn't try to fix it, didn't offer empty comfort, just said, "I see you, Inkiru." And she believed him. Then slowly, something dangerous happened. They fell in love. Not the loud, dramatic love of festival songs, not the passionate, consuming love of folktales, but the quiet, steady love that builds like a house. One conversation, one shared silence, one moment of being seen, then another, then another. When people whispered, he ignored them. When they laughed, because of course they laughed, because what was a decent woodcarver doing with the forgotten girl? He smiled wider and took her hand. When village gossips asked why he wasn't pursuing one of the prettier girls, he said simply, "Because I don't want them." Love crept in quietly, like dawn breaking over the savannah. By the time they realized it had arrived, it was everywhere. When Obina asked Inkiru to marry him, he did it without ceremony. They were sitting in his workshop, wood shavings on the floor, evening light coming through the door, his hands covered in dust from carving. He said, "I want to marry you." Not a question, A statement, as if it was obvious, as if there was no other logical conclusion to what they had built. Inkiru's breath caught. Why? She asked. Because she needed to know, because her grandmother's warning was always there beneath her skin. He said, because I love you, simply. Because I wake up thinking about what you said the day before. Because nothing I carve feels finished until you've seen it. Because you make me better just by existing. He paused, looking directly at her. Because I was alone before you, and I don't want to be alone anymore. She wanted to tell him about the mark, about the warning, about what might happen, but the words stuck in her throat. Because she was terrified that if she told him, he would leave, or worse, he would stay, but for the wrong reasons. So she said yes, and hoped love would be enough.